Hi friends, welcome back to another video and happy Christmas or happy festive Yule period. Whether you celebrate Christmas or not, I hope that you're having either a Merry Christmas or just a happy and cozy festive season. I thought that today I would continue on the train of kind of cozy, relaxing, more fun videos up until January, when I'll be back into my videos that are more focused on disability, chronic illness, all of that kind of stuff. And today I figured a fun one to do would be a get to know me video, because it occurred to me that strangely I haven't made one yet. Which feels kind of strange because I do feel like I share a lot of kind of personal stories in other videos that I've made, but not just kind of random things about me that you might not know. And I know for myself that I really appreciate when other video creators do this. It makes me feel like I know them a little bit better and kind of like we're friends, and that's the kind of energy that I want to give off here, something very positive and personal. Today I'm going to be answering 25 get to know me questions. They're all quite personal. And it's kind of funny because they start off quite kind of simple and basic, and then they get slowly more and more existential and serious and philosophical the further they go. So stay tuned for that, plumbing the depths of my soul. I will also say real quick here that if you have any videos you'd like me to consider making in 2023, please do let me know. If you have anything, any topic, chronic illness, disability related, or even just videos like this or vintage fashion videos, whatever it is, please let me know because I will take them all into consideration. But not to worry, because I do have a very long list of videos I'd like to make. Okay, so let's get started. I have my printout of questions to answer, and on the back there is yet another recipe, an old recipe for roast veggies. So if you have any Japanese pumpkin, apparently it's good as a roast veggie. Okay, so question 1 is, are you named after someone? Which kind of. This is a bit of a difficult question for me to answer. So basically, when I was born, my mum was very into Formula One racing, and she had a particular affinity for an Italian race car driver. I believe his name was Nannini. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong. I am not Italian, but my name is. So basically, when I came along, she decided that she wanted me to have an Italian name. And so in terms of Italian names that she knew of, female names, she picked Gina after Gina Lollobrigida, who was an actress. So while I wasn't technically named after Gina Lollobrigida in the sense that my mum loves her and everything she does, I was named Gina because it's Italian, because my mum liked this Italian Formula One race car driver. So it's kind of an interesting story to tell. Nice easy one to start with. Okay, so question 2 is, who is your favorite writer? And oh boy, I really should have prepared this one because that is a very hard one for me. For those of you who don't know, I am really into books. I haven't talked about it much on this channel, at least not yet, but I am really into books. I went to university for English actually, and I've just always loved reading my entire life. And there are a couple of favourites questions in here, so I think what I'm going to do is split them into kind of all-time or childhood favourites and then like current favourites, because I have a really hard time with favourites, and I'm one of those people that says like everything is my favourite. Like I've always had a hard time picking a favourite colour or, you know, a favourite anything pretty much, because I tend to really like things when I like them. Special interest. And so it's really hard for me to narrow that down. For this particular question though, I'm going to narrow it down into favourite classic novelist and then favourite modern novelist. Not a plural, Gina. Don't do it. So my favourite classic novelist is very easy. I really like Jane Austen. She's one of my favourite authors. If you watched my last video, you probably saw my Jane Austen stationery box thing in the background. I actually read my first Jane Austen novel when I was at college, and it was Pride and Prejudice. I know it's pretty typical, but Pride and Prejudice will always be my favourite. I don't know if it's just because I studied it so in depth and it was kind of how I fell in love with her books, but I don't know. I mean, I love the other books too, but Pride and Prejudice just has the edge for me. I'm not saying it's the most complex in like a literary sense or anything like that, but I just love it. It's a comfort read for me, and I read it over and over again. I have far too many copies of it, and of course I love Jane's other books too. So yeah, she is definitely my favourite classic novelist. It's really hard for me to pick a current favourite writer. I read a lot, I read very widely, I read a lot of non-fiction nowadays as well as fiction, and so it's just very difficult because there are so many different categories. Okay, so for this question I'm actually going to go with the novelist for whom I have the most hype whenever they write anything new, and for some years now that has been Erin Morgenstern. I absolutely love The Night Circus. It's a book that I read over and over again. It's the perfect autumn or winter book. I should probably actually reread it sometime soon, but I really love The Night Circus, and when The Starless Sea came out, I was equally excited. So I'm going to have to say Erin Morgenstern, but she is there is a lot of contention for that top spot. Don't overthink it, Gina. It's a little late for that. So question number 3 is, what are your hobbies? I have a lot of interests. Like a lot of interests, some of which people probably wouldn't guess by looking at me. So I'm really into video games. Me and my partner were just joking recently about me having a gaming Twitch channel while dressed all in vintage. That would be pretty funny, right? What a niche audience. I like painting and drawing, gardening I really enjoy, and looking after my indoor plants. I have a recent real fondness for jigsaw puzzles. Like I really enjoy doing jigsaw puzzles. Obviously reading, already said that, and writing, although that's more of a career hobby overlap these days. NaNoWriMo does not count as a hobby, it is too much work. I also really love fashion, of course, and I do consider it a hobby, and a little bit of sewing, knitting. I'm recently trying to get into crochet as well, I'll get around to that at some point. I have a lot of hobbies, okay? A lot of hobbies. I used to be really into roller skating. I played roller derby for a while, which is hilarious to think about now with the way that my body is, and would be a terrible idea for me to do. Maybe I should start that vintage gamer channel just to add another thing to my list. Number 4 is, who did you look up to growing up? This was a fairly easy one for me, especially when I consider what I was like as a younger child, so kind of like ages like 10, 11 and under, and that was Lara Croft from the Tomb Raider series and the movies, because Angelina Jolie, just Lara Croft. Next question. Number 5 is, who is your favourite musician? My favourite band, which is how I'm going to answer this question, is Twerp, TWRP, who I've talked about in this video, which I will link up here, about my experience going to see them recently. They're amazing. They're kind of like spacey funk rock, a little bit of like 80s influence. I can't even describe it, but I absolutely love them. They're the most wholesome of boys and they are my favourites. Number 6 is, what is your favourite video game? And again, this is one I'm going to split up into my favourite all-time games from childhood and my current favourite or most played game. Yeah, I'm sorry, this isn't going to be one favourite, I just don't work that way. So my all-time favourite games that are also childhood games for me are Spyro 2 Ripto's Rage, which was for the PlayStation 1, and Tekken Tag Tournament, which I recently started playing again, and it's such a good game. I just love that game. My current favourites, in terms of time played, I really like Overwatch, but Blizzard are pretty crap right now, and I don't really want to big them up at all. Another favourite series of mine, especially a current favourite, is the Persona series. I really enjoyed Persona 4 Golden when it came to PC, and I'm now playing Persona 5 Royal, and I'm having the best time. I'm big into Persona. I've got a lot of Persona figures. Oh, figure collecting, that's also a hobby of mine. Maybe I'll put some footage in of my figure shelf right now. Number 7 is, what is your favourite book? And I realise I've already told you this. Pride and Prejudice. The Night Circus is another one of my favourite books, and I feel like I ought to now give you one that I haven't previously mentioned in a past question. I'm going to go and have a look. Dexterity problems. Okay, I've chosen my book, and I'm actually going to give you a non-fiction one for this, since I do read a lot of non-fiction, and especially this year that is going to be Kristen Neff's Self-Compassion. That book got me through some difficult things that have happened this year. Basically, I read it through at the beginning of the year, and now I'm listening to the audiobook. I'm currently listening to it actually. I bought the audiobook so that I could have access to it when I'm not going to sit down and actually start rereading the actual physical book. But it was so incredibly helpful for me and really helped me through some very difficult times. So I think that's a book that's going to stay with me for a long time, hopefully in my life. And so to me, that constitutes a favourite book. Question number 8 is, are you a good cook? Trying to answer honestly. Okay, I wouldn't consider myself an amazing cook. I can cook for myself. I can cook fairly healthy meals for myself. It's never been something that's particularly interested me. It's something that I think a lot of other circumstances in my life have affected. So, you know, when you have an energy limiting condition and you only have the energy to do so much, if you're not like mad about cooking, it's probably something that you kind of don't want to waste so much time on, even though obviously eating well is important. But for me, it's just not something that was ever high on my priority list. So while I can cook and I can kind of make meals from scratch, I have a couple of meals that I cook regularly, and I've actually been branching out recently and cooking new meals that are very like autumn and winter and very cozy and filling. I'm not like an amazing cook. I think I can make something pretty tasty, but I'm not amazing at it because I haven't really tried to be. And I think apart from that, I have a lot of gastro issues. And I'm currently on the low FODMAP diet, which makes things even more difficult and more restricted. And I'm also a long-time vegetarian. So there's a lot going on, I think, into play with this. But I'm an okay cook. Like, you wouldn't starve if you came over to my house, as long as you're prepared to eat low FODMAP veggie meals. And they can be pretty good, to be fair. Number 9 is, do you have any pets? And I had to include this question because I just want to show off my cat. Okay, she's literally sitting right behind the tripod right now, fast asleep. She's so cute. But yes, I have a cat called Mittens. She is 10 years old. I love her to bits. She is extremely playful, even though she's no longer a kitten. She loves to play, run about. She still gets the zoomies quite frequently. She's very mischievous, but she can also be very loving and loves to come and sit on my knee when I'm reading my book in the morning. So yeah, just had to give a little shout out to cute Mittens. Number 10 is, what is under your bed? Books. Boxes and boxes full of book overflow. I used to have 3 side-by-side floor-to-ceiling bookshelves in my very small bedroom, and it was a lot. It was quite overstimulating, and I loved how they looked, and I'd love to have them in like a living room or a library. Just waiting for my library to come along. But in my room it was just a little bit much, and it was very cluttered and kind of full in there. So I made the decision to just keep one bookshelf and another shelf for books, and put all the rest of them under the bed. And it is a shame. I can't wait to have a bit more room and get out some of my more favourite books, because they're not very accessible under there. Some figures that I've switched out that are no longer like in the current display, like the Harry Potter ones, and some tarot cards of various types. Oh, this is a really difficult one. What is something about yourself that you hope will change, but probably never will? This isn't generally my philosophy. I think overall, I think you definitely can change a lot of things. I've definitely worked on a lot of things throughout my life. I'm quite into self-development, not in a way that is like, just be positive, happiness is a choice. More based in like psychological principles. I actually considered becoming training to be a psychologist at one point. So I'm into that, and kind of all of the things that can help with mental health issues and kind of change a lot of the issues that we all have over time. So I'm someone who very much believes in things, you know, you being able to change and improve your life to a certain extent. But there are all things, either they're, you know, genetically inherited, or just kind of the way we are and part of our personality, that we gripe about them, but they're probably never going to change. This is a hard one for me to answer, but I think for me, it is, I get very indignant when I read the news, as I'm sure a lot of you also probably do, and so I have to kind of steel myself. I'm a HSP, I'm a highly sensitive person, and so reading the news can be a real fun time because I feel things very deeply. I'm not someone who can sit and watch hours of news TV about how the world is terrible and all the horrendous things that are going on, which is, let's face it, what the news kind of focuses on generally, and not be impacted by it. It can definitely impact my mood, and so I have to have a very I have to engage with the news in a very careful way. But politics and news and all stuff like that can make me feel very indignant. I can get very down, I can get very angry about things that are going on and quite impassioned about it. And I do really like that about myself in a lot of ways, because it shows that I'm not completely closed off. Like, I'm someone who's open to my humanity and the fact that, like, you know, oh, it's happening on the other side of the world, it could never happen to me. Like, that's not how I see it at all. Like, I consider myself like a global citizen rather than like, this is my spit of land and this is what I care about. Oh gosh, I'm going on a tangent. It's fine. I wish that I could sometimes remain informed without it having such a outsized impact sometimes on my mood. Sometimes I have to take news breaks because it bothers me. It probably won't change. It's probably just the way I am. And like I say, I do like certain things about that, and I'd never want to close myself off to that empathy. So, by the way, we're into the philosophical questions a little bit now. Well, this one isn't so philosophical. Never mind. Number 12 is, what is the first thing you do when you get home? And that for me is always after I've taken well, I guess the first thing I do actually is put my bag down, take off my shoes, put my stick down. But that's not very interesting, so let's skip that one. The first thing I do is usually fill the kettle and make a cup of tea. It's just automatic at this point. I'm British, I like tea. It's what you do, especially this time of year, going home and being oh, it's time for a cup of tea. Perfect, love it, every single time. Number 13 is, what is the last book you read? I'm currently reading 2 books. One is called Kintsugi. Kintsugi refers to the Japanese art of repairing broken things with gold, and kind of appreciating them specifically for their flaws and the fact that they have been repaired from being broken, and how that relates to philosophy. That's what the book is about, how it can relate to your life and your perspective on hardships within your life. And the other book I'm reading is, which one is it? Christmas at Woolworths. It's a Christmas book by Elaine Everest, I believe is her name. It's a long story. You guys know I like vintage, and my grandma worked in Woolworths during World War II, so I was like, you know what, this sounds perfect for me. It's giving me a little window into what her experiences might have been like, and that's very interesting to me. I'm also reading a book called You Are Enough. Can't remember who wrote it. And I'm also listening to... God, I'm so sorry. I'm also listening to a book called Less Stuff on the Libby app from my library, which is about decluttering and living with less. So yeah, there you go. I read a lot at the same time. 14 is, what is the last movie you saw at the cinema? And this, for me, is Bob's Burgers, which I saw with Kieran this year in I think the spring, summer. And before that, that's the only movie I've seen since before the pandemic really got started. Before that, the last thing I saw in the cinema was Emma, which came out in February or January of 2020, just before things started kicking off. Cold in here, guys. It's very cold. Number 15 is, what is your favourite TV show? Is this favourite of all time or current favourites? Let's do both. Favourite of all time, SpongeBob SquarePants. That's it, that's the answer. Yeah, no, I love SpongeBob, and I always have. It's delightful, the amount of SpongeBob memes that keep being produced, and I really appreciate them. So yeah, I really enjoy SpongeBob. Yeah, I really like cartoons, The Simpsons. If all the copies of The Simpsons, all the recordings of it were lost and all the scripts were lost, me and Kieran could probably sit and rewrite them all just from our own heads. In terms of what I've been really enjoying recently, I really love Grace and Frankie on Netflix. Oh my god, it's the best, and I am literally, you want to know about me, I'm literally just a combination of Sol and Frankie. That is me. Number 16 is, what position do you sleep in? And this is an interesting one for me because I don't really have a choice in that anymore. I used to sleep, prepare yourselves, on my front, which is apparently a really rare way to sleep. It's also really bad for you and your spine, but I just slept that way since I was a child. Every single night I had to get in the same position, and I had to eventually, when I realised how bad it was for me, train myself out of it, and that was awful, and it took a lot of time and I had a lot of sleepless nights because of that. I now sleep on my side, and I have a Cali Sleep noodle, we call it, a noodle pillow, because that helps support your shoulders, hips, knees, all that good stuff, which if you have EDS, just laying on your side without any support it's not going to be a good time. Here we go, back to the philosophical ones. What has been the hardest thing for you to face or learn? Oh, this is difficult. Oh, I need to think about this for a considerable amount of time. The hardest thing? I think the hardest thing for me to learn about and to kind of change in terms of my behavior is my intense people pleasing, which is a bit of a family trait. Hi mum, if you're watching. No, but I, especially as a someone who grew up and was socialized to be female and to be incredibly accommodating and to never say no and to always, all of that stuff is, it just leads to this massive ball of people pleasing and being unable to say no, which I definitely still kind of semi have. It's a lot, and training myself to have healthy boundaries and to be able to say no has been one of the hardest things I've ever done. And I do still struggle with it, especially when there are people who struggle to accept the boundaries of others and who might push back or find your boundaries to be an issue. That's one of the hardest things for me to do, is like, then I have to go in and reiterate my boundaries, even though setting them was incredibly difficult in the first place. Like, that's very difficult for me. And yeah, it's been very hard for me to learn, but I've made a ton of progress on that, which I'm really glad to say. So it's very difficult. Okay, so the next question is, what are the top 3 qualities that draw you to someone new? I would say a sense of humor. If someone doesn't have a sense of humor, I just switch off. I just can't. I find them too serious, and I love serious conversations, but you have to have a sense of humor about life. Otherwise, what is the point? So yeah, sense of humor is definitely number 1, being able to kind of not take themselves too seriously and kind of have a laugh. I think kindness and thoughtfulness to others. Someone who just, you see them, maybe they treat like wait staff really well. I think that's always a good green flag, whereas the opposite's definitely a red flag. Just someone who seems kind and has empathy for other people, even if they're not close to them or related or whatever, or friends. And I think being down to earth as well is another one. Someone who's aware of their own quirks and flaws, and someone who's not someone who tries to hide them or sweep them under the rug or pretend to be perfect. Just someone who's very genuine and authentic in that way as well. Those are very appealing qualities to me. The next question is, how are you different and similar to your mum and your dad? Okay, so my dad, how are we similar? I'm very stubborn. I definitely inherited his stubbornness. I'm also very introverted and don't really care for a great deal of socialization, which I also think I share with him. I think we're also similar in that we don't do very well at performing for other people. So a good example of this is in all the holiday photos, Mom's like, smile, come on everybody smile, and kind of putting on this big like cheesy grin, and I just really struggle to do that and like put on like a fake smile. I kind of look like I'm grimacing. And my dad also generally just looks like he's frowning in a lot of these pictures. If you look at my thumbnails, you'll be like, that's weird, Gina. Well, yes, it feels incredibly unnatural to smile in photos or thumbnails. Used to be terrible at it. Definitely getting better at it. I also found out this was like an ASD thing of people who were like, I thought I was smiling, but actually I look like I'm about to murder the person taking the photo. So that's definitely been my experience, but I'm getting a lot better at it. And in a lot of my photos as well on Instagram, the reason I'm actually smiling and the reason it doesn't look so terrifying and scary is because Kieran's saying something behind the camera that's making me laugh. So there you go. So that's how I'm different. No, that's how I'm similar to my dad. How are we different? A lot of ways. It's kind of like a Lisa homodynamic in a lot of ways. My dad's a big meat eater, but I've been vegetarian for let's see, 16 years. I did it. My dad isn't very in touch with his emotions in that kind of typical kind of male way, whereas I am very in touch with mine. I'm a massive empath, and I would say that he's not necessarily. He's very kind and he'd do anything for you, very generous, but we're different in that way for sure, how we relate to our feelings and emotions and stuff like that. So my mum, who I definitely have a lot in common with. We're both quite sensitive, I would say. Probably me more so. Like I said, I'm a highly sensitive person, but she's also very sensitive. We're both empaths. We both have a lot of like similar hobbies and interests. So we both love nature, for example. That should probably have been in my hobbies thing, nature walks. Whoops. I think we just have a very similar temperament to each other, and we get along quite well because of that, and we're very close. How am I different to my mum? I will sit and have a political debate if I feel like it. I'm very kind of staunch in my opinions and values, whereas my mum tends to be more quiet and kind of like not really necessarily feel the need to voice those, I would say. I think she'd agree with that. I think we have different senses of humour. We do share a lot of humour, to be fair, and we do have a lot in common in that way, but we definitely have a lot of things that we differ in that sense. I think I'm more adventurous in exploring things that are perhaps considered like esoteric. Yes, I love them both very much. Hi mum. Hi dad, but you're definitely not watching this. Number 20 is, what non-profit do you believe in supporting? a lot of them. So I think we all have certain things that we obviously appreciate. I'm a member of EDS UK because obviously I have EDS, and so I know the important work they do and I like to give to them. I like to pick a Christmas charity every year, and this year I've picked Crisis at Christmas, who provide somewhere for people without homes to go on Christmas, to get like a good meal, to stay warm, stuff like that. Charities that I give to regularly, I tend to switch them up. So for a long time I gave to WWF, but they had a little bit of a scandal I didn't agree with. So I switched to Gorilla Doctors. I'm a Gorilla Guardian. I switched to Gorilla Doctors, who are a charity who take care of endangered species of gorillas. I love gorillas. A story for another day, but yeah, I really like gorillas. I don't know, we're pals. I like them. There's just so many. I wish I could give to all of them. It's really hard to pick. Yeah, anything to do with nature, animals, I feel, because they don't have a voice and can't speak up for themselves as well. Animal charities are also really good ones, particularly animals that are more like animals that we don't see every day. You know what I mean? So like I don't certainly see gorillas every single day. Although I did meet one once and it was the best ever. Please find something that you believe in and give even a little bit to it, because it really does make a massive difference and it helps keep these charities going. So if you could change one thing about the world, what would you do? Difficult. Very difficult, very philosophical. Probably make people less reactionary. I think a lot of the world's problems would be lesser if people stopped and paused and waited to act from a place of semi-calmness and rationality before acting. I think that could potentially stop a lot of awful things happening in the world. Not to mention just kind of like smaller everyday situations will be a lot easier if people were less reactionary and kind of taken by those immediate like lizard brain, like, we are angry, time to attack. Of course, I include myself in this. I'm not saying like everyone but me is reactionary. Like, no, I also wish that I were less reactionary. I try. Mindfulness helps. But yeah, I think making people less reactionary and a bit more thoughtful in turn would make the world a much better place. Would you rather always be over or underdressed? Next question, please. What is your Myers-Briggs personality type? My Myers-Briggs personality type is INFJ. It's the rarest one. It is. It's the rarest. It's the rarest type. No, it's INFJ. And good lord, when I read this for the first time, I was like, this is actually uncanny. INFJ's letters, for those who don't know, it stands for introversion, intuition, feeling, judging, and they are very much led by their principles and their values. I think the shorthand for this personality type is the advocate, which seems appropriate. But yeah, I mean, I definitely read it and it sums me up to a T. So, you know, if you're going to do a Gina deep dive, just go and read the Myers-Briggs INFJ personality type because it's uncanny. Oh, would you rather be able to play 10 different instruments beautifully or speak 10 languages fluently? This was a really hard one, and at the end of the day, I think I'm going to pick 10 languages. It's very, very difficult because I do like to play instruments. I play a little bit of guitar, I have a bass guitar. I think that if you could speak 10 languages fluently, that would open up so many doors to you. You could travel anywhere in the world and, well, not anywhere in the world, but you could travel to a lot of places in the world and know what people were saying. And I think especially if you could pick which languages you wanted to know. Let's think, I think I'd pick like, in terms of like fluency, I can speak a little French, but not a lot. I think I'd pick French, Norwegian, Dutch, Icelandic would be fun, Japanese, Chinese would be fun as well. Oh gosh, I can't sit here, I only have a limited amount of filming time, but those are some that I'd love to learn. And yeah, I just think it would be an amazing tool to connect with people. And how many books could you read in how many different languages? Like, oh, okay. And the final question is, would you rather live in a rural area or a city? When I was a kid, this definitely would have been a city. And then as I got a little bit older, it would have definitely been like, oh, I don't know, I can't really pick. I see the advantages to both. Nowadays, definitely rural. Not like too rural, just because thinking practically, I like to have access to some form of civilization for the things, you know, being able to like go to the library and like go for coffee and things like that and kind of have fun landmarks, things like that around you to go and visit. But yeah, it definitely would be like a cute cottage. To live my cottagecore dreams out near a woods and preferably some water because I like water a lot, like a river or something, or a waterfall. Yeah. Don't mind me, I'm just mentally exiting stage left. But yeah, that would definitely be my answer nowadays. I love nature. And being able to go out and walk in nature, have a massive garden, that'd be lovely. My own little vegetable patch, flower patch, and just being able to go out into the forest and like pick herbs and see deer and birds. That's it, that's my dream life. That's what I want. Yay, all done. That was really fun. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. It got a little bit crazy and rumbly. I'm obviously a little bit loopy today, but like this is what happens when I get to talk about my interests. But yeah, I hope you guys have really enjoyed this, and it's given you a little bit of a glimpse, a bit of a window into who I am in a personal capacity. In January, we will be back to our regularly scheduled programming of disability and chronic illness content. And until then, take care, guys. See you next time. Love and spoons. Bye.